There are a few things you absolutely need to survive. Before we can deal with anything else in our lives, we have to take care of the fundamental physical needs of our bodies: rest, food, and water. And the need for water overpowers them all. They say that if you feel thirsty, you're already at least a little bit dehydrated. But most of the time, we grab a glass of water and don't think anything else of it. But what if you really had nothing to drink? If water in our bodies isn't replaced, we start borrowing it from other cells in our bodies, including our brain cells. It literally becomes difficult for us to think. And this can all get really serious really fast. In average temperatures, typical survival without water is just 100 hours. That's about 4 days. And if it's hot or you're physically active, that time drops dramatically. We simply cannot live without water. And that's the very serious situation that the Israelites find themselves in now. There is nothing to drink. If they don't find a solution pretty quick, it won't matter that they were delivered from Egypt. They'll die, and this whole Exodus story will be over. Of course, this isn't the first time they face scarcity or fear of death. 3 days after crossing the Red Sea, they had a similar problem. This time, they found water, but it was undrinkable. Moses turns to God, who tells him to throw a piece of wood into the water to make it sweet. I don't know of any trick about wood and bitter water, but it's this miracle that enables God to demonstrate continued power, presence, and provision of the Israelites in the wilderness. From there, they continue onward and realize now they're hungry. They complain to Moses, and God responds by sending a daily miracle of manna and quail. Surely now they knew that God was providing for them. But again, as they are traveling, they run out of water and find nothing to replenish their supplies. And yet again, the people are overwhelmed with fear and look longingly back to Egypt. In that moment, they are too consumed with their need to remember all the great things God has done for them. They're like an infant. They won't stop crying for her milk. Despite the fact that her caring parents have never left her hungry for long, she cries and cries, incapable of any logic that says it will be okay. They're just getting a bottle ready. They're coming. They'll take care of you like they have every other time. The Israelites, in that same way, are so thirsty. And at least in Egypt, they had water. At least there they knew what to expect. Their bodies and their souls were accustomed to the toxicity of oppression fed to them every day. A few months of freedom wasn't enough to rid them of the poison flowing through their veins and teach them to trust in God's provision instead of Pharaoh's. When we too are thirsty, we crave what will satisfy that need the quickest and easiest. And somehow we manage to forget the events that led us into the wilderness in the first place, and we look back dreamily to what once was. We are thirsty when it hurts, when we or our loved ones suffer, when life doesn't make sense, when terrible things happen to faithful people. We are thirsty when we are sick or in pain, when we are lonely, rejected, grieving, and simply dried up from all that life has held for us. Where is God when we can't go on much longer, when we can't even take another step? Where is God in our thirst for a COVID cure? Where is God in our thirst for racial justice? Where is God when hurricanes destroy and fires burn? No matter how many stories of provision we can recall, when we are overwhelmed by immediate needs, it's easy to forget what God has already done. It's easy to stop moving forward into the danger of the desert when we've forgotten the danger that lays behind us. When the Israelites found themselves with nothing to drink, mouths dry, heads pounding, vision spinning, muscles aching, of course they cried out to Moses, "Give us something to drink." They had seen Moses act in the name of God time and time again. He needed to do something, and quick. Only Moses seems to really understand that he's just following orders. He's God's instrument and incapable of nothing, all on his own. And in their intense thirst for water, for renewed faith and passion in the journey, the Israelites begin to wonder, what if Moses got it all wrong? What if all those signs that we saw were merely a coincidence? What if we took this giant leap of faith and it was all for nothing? But then God, when Moses asks what to do, says nothing about their fear and anxiety and even their anger. God simply tells Moses to strike the rock with his staff, and water will flow. In the desert, God provides living water that not only sustains their bodies but renews their souls. And as the Israelites drink deeply from this ongoing promise, they gain the strength to turn their eyes away from Pharaoh and look again into the uncertainty of the wilderness and the certainty of God's compassion and love. This living water is not contained in the desert, but is carried through into Christ's ministry as he too offers renewal for the soul. When Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at the well, he asks her for a drink of water, and he tells her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty." Sometimes water is literally all we need. A cup of cold water after hours in the July heat is a grace that we can only comprehend in that moment. But often we need the living water that only God can provide. We need to drink deeply of compassion and grace that flows out from impossible places. The grace of a caring visitor with a folding chair on our lawn, breaking that cycle of loneliness. Of a compassionate friend listening with us as we hear the doctor's update. Of online worship, which spans distances that we would never have thought possible even a few decades ago. Of progress and allies in the quest for justice. Of a phone call that begins healing a broken relationship. Of the simple act of benevolence that masks and social distancing provide. Of knowing that we are prayed for. Of being reminded that we are not alone, that we are loved, and that this living water will continue to sustain us. We may not immediately be transported to the promised land, but we are renewed for the journey through the wilderness. We are given the strength to keep our eyes focused on the goodness to come. In the wilderness, we must rely on the living water that God provides. We must rely on God to accompany us through even the most difficult, challenging circumstances. Today, though many things are uncertain, though fear and anxiety are high, though there are so many questions that are good to ask, there is one thing we must remember. There is water. There is living water. And this living water of God's love and grace is unstoppable. Let us all drink deeply today. Let us all let the living water fill our bodies and our souls, giving us the strength we need to journey forward. Amen.